Higher sex principles. It is generally understood that sexual intercourse is limited to an actual cohabitation between males and females of each species. This concept is so fundamentally a part of our present knowledge that it will shock the reader to learn that every physical relation between any two oppositely polarized units of nature in the universe is a low-voltage sex relation. Cohabitation is merely a sufficiently high-voltage sex union to short-circuit the two poles of the human electric battery. When this happens, the human battery is dead until recharged by the heartbeat and breathing process, just as the electric battery is dead from the same cause until recharged by the pulsing heartbeat of the electric current. A contact between opposite units is not necessarily for sex relation, for the contact is already there. It is perpetually there in the electric union, which connects every corpuscle in the universe with every other corpuscle. Every positive corpuscle in the universe is constantly interchanging with every negative one. The sex union and its continuity is what keeps the universe a continuous one. That is what constitutes the universal heartbeat of God's body. In other words, low-voltage sexual cohabitation is a continued and perpetual interchange of all things in nature with all other things. It is through sex union of all things with all other things that this universe is perpetually repeated in all of its forms. High-voltage sex unions between two mates who are sufficiently balanced to be potent will reproduce forms like the two, but the perpetual sex union of all things, which takes place continually between all things, actually determines the forms of all things. Universal electric interchange between universal opposites determines all forms and gradually transforms all forms. Good examples of such transformations through universal interchange are the transformation of all animal and vegetable forms in various ages, such as the Carboniferous age and the age of huge reptiles, such as the dinosaur. Forms of animal and vegetable life had to conform with atmospheric conditions arising out of the youth of the planet and its nearer proximity to the sun. In other words, light pressures condition all forms, and the light of dual electric waves interweaves those forms into the patterns which polarized pressures of light determine for them. Transformation of man. A cultured man will be transformed mentally and physically by sufficiently intimate social intercourse with thieves, thugs, and prostitutes. The change is effected through electrical interchange of man and environment, and that interchange is also sex. Sexual intercourse will hasten the transformation and also reproduce duplicate forms. But the social intercourse alone will produce and reproduce similar forms of all units sexually affected by the increasingly higher voltage of close contact between the units of any environment. The hills become a part of the man who lives in them, and the man becomes a part of the hills. Such a man loves nature's rhythms playing on the harps of the wind. The poet is transformed into the appearance of a poet because of his intercourse with all beautiful things. All intercourse between all material things is electrical. An electrical expression is divided into sexed pairs, positive and negative. The universe is one unit. All things in it are other things. All are involved in each other. The basis of positive and negative electrical expression is sex. Sex is of all things from the beginning. Sex begins when light begins. Sex is desire for the appearance of being, which constitutes the appearance of existence. Nothing can be without the desire to be. All things are which desire to be. Desire dominates all thinking. Desire dominates all matter. All desire is sex desire. The greatest desire of all creating things, organic and inorganic, is to increase their appearance of separability from all other things in the universe. In other words, to stand out more and more conspicuously as a significant individual rather than as a part of another one. The building of one's individual separate self is the most difficult attribute to wrest from nature and the most difficult to maintain. Millions of years of indefatigable work are required for a man to unfold from an insignificant individual to a genius. Each individual self is the sum total of all his sex decisions. Each person is what he is because of his sex decisions. To insulate oneself from all unfavorable sex unions, voluntary, involuntary, social, and sexual, and to contact only that which will build a self into a great self, is the supreme achievement of each moment of each life. The universal thinker of all thoughts, which flows through us, is forever planning perfect expression of the divine ideal in each of us. The entirety of universal power is concentrated upon each one of us to fashion us into the forms of our desire. The form of our desire is forever unfolding into the universe of form to manifest our thinking as co-creator with God's thinking, and refolding into the seed of us to perpetually repeat that form. When man becomes sufficiently ennobled as a self-creation to become a conscious co-creator with the Universal One, it should be his supreme task to perfect his self by using the free will given him for that purpose. He then unfolds in the pattern of his desire. He himself molds himself mentally into a genius or a moron, as he chooses, or physically into a Hercules or atrophied, impotent weakling, also as he chooses. The priceless gift of free will implies a trusteeship of worthiness to use it constructively. For if used destructively, the whole universe will help one to retrograde as it will help one to progress. Our hell is self-made, even as our heaven is. Each person should guard his interchange with all other people and things in his environment and choose that alone which ennobles his self. This can be achieved only by association with other noble selves of his own kind, and with beautiful things of his environment, and with still more beautiful imaginings of his inspired inner vision. Such well-chosen intercourse will transform each self from moment to moment, from the attained perfection of this moment to the attained perfection of the next moment. The greater and more far-reaching transformer of a self is balanced sexual intercourse. One's entire pattern of self-form, and even one's immortal rhythm of eons of building, is instantly and violently changed by every sexual intercourse with an unbalanced other half. The rhythm of each becomes the rhythm of both. Promiscuity is in either social or sexual intercourse is the greatest destroyer of individuality, of self, or of type, or of acquired power. Promiscuity with unbalanced mates condemns them, one to the backward path. All things are divided into equal halves. All halves are unbalanced. Each type should seek its balancing other half for its self-recreation or rebirth through balance. That is one meaning and purpose of sex. The other meaning is reproduction. Sex union is mentally creative as well as physically. Human intellect has advanced beyond the animal because of acquired mental creativeness through sex. Animal sex urge is for physical reproduction only. The mental recreative urge is not in them. Animals in nature breed true to balance, while man flagrantly violates this principle. The greatest blessing which can come to any half unit in God's creating universe is the finding of its balancing other half. The search for that other half is the supreme urge which makes of man the perpetual searcher for the supreme discovery which is seldom found. This perpetual search of man has a name, and the word for it is romance. Scientific answers to sex promiscuity. Second lecture. Honor then dishonor. A meritorious rise to fame frequently becomes ignoble through over-attention to sex practice. Fine qualities that have produced success become dulled by a breaking of the moral law which taints the whole way of life. The descent of an individual or nation begins at the moment of the turning of desire away from a high moral standard to a promiscuous one. Individuals, nations, and whole world civilizations have failed from the same material cause of too much luxury, too much money, and too much easy living. These are the material things that sap the ambition of man or nation and tempt them away from the spirit of work and achievement through which he rose. Any change of desire in man automatically changes the character of his environment, his associations, and his life practices. Any such changes begin at once to reflect their patterns into the pattern of the man, or even into the national and world pattern. This is not theory, but an inescapable law. High electric pressure lowers toward low electric pressure much more readily than the reverse effect. Highly developed culture follows the same law. It is difficult to rise from low standards of culture to high, but easy to fall from high to low. It is pitiful to see young people who have struggled so hard to climb their mountaintop fall back so quickly through ignorance of this one greatest danger. The aristocrat of Park Avenue will slowly become tainted with the moral, mental, and physical environment of the slums simply by living there long enough. His language will show the change of his self-pattern. His very walk and gestures will show it, and his body will very quickly evidence it in every phase of its expression. Even the evangelist is affected by it, no matter how he immunizes his thought and actions from its influence. His countenance will change to express the thinking and actions of his electrical environment in spite of himself. His ideals and the inherited ideas of his ancestors will also become more and more undermined in accordance with the intensity of his relations to his environment. Add sexual relations to this, and the degradation of his unfolding self-pattern is greater through such intimate contact. With each sexual experience, the pattern of the blood cells is instantly affected, and sequentially the brain. Sex practice determines self-pattern. The self-pattern which every man is building for himself is the electric waveform record of what each person now is at this precise moment. It is each man's standard of his self. That standard is very difficult to raise to higher levels and very easy to sink toward lower levels. Nothing in life aids decadence so effectively as wrong mating and promiscuity, for each person either ascends or descends in body pattern to the level of the mate he chooses. This is a thought which the rather free-thinking youth of today should weigh more carefully, for today's thinking and sex practice is causing a decadence in our entire civilization, which is very noticeable in our mass culture. Our arts are already decadent. Our bodies will follow this degenerate trend in due time, unless the trend is checked. Take note of natural law working out this principle on other human relations through environment. Hill-born men or prairie-born men or men who follow the sea become hill lovers or prairie lovers or lovers of the sea because they have interchanged one with another the electric waveforms which make each thing that with which it has sufficiently interchanged. The love of hill country or sea by hill or sea-born men is not a matter of their personal taste. It is because the electric wave pattern of the hills or sea environment has interchanged with their own physical and mental patterns. The hills, the seas, and man actually become a part of each other. Remove that part and man is uncomfortable. He misses it as he would miss a finger or an arm if it were removed. A clergyman who becomes a bandit will soon look and act like a bandit. Moral and spiritual patterns thus degenerate as inexorably as physical ones. If such remote contexts recreate highly cultured people into a decadent ones, how much more so do intimate contexts as sex relations degrade them. And I'm going to end this now because this one can't be so long. I don't have as much time on my little cell phone. So, I invite you to read all of this by going to the Divine Iliad 2 and listening to me read the entire book. It's really good. What he has to say here is very important for people to understand, especially to the young. And if you're older and you've already made this kind of wrong decisions about sex practices, getting closer to God will remove that karma that you engendered in your electrical interchange with others of lower electrical charge. Getting close to God takes care of all of that. But if you're young and you haven't started down that path, know that this is important to understand this. And be wise in your choice of your mate. Find someone that is like you mentally and spiritually. And then you'll be making the right choice. And I'm not saying it has to be homosexual or heterosexual. It's whoever that other person you love is mentally and psychically, spiritually. You have to think a little bit alike, is what I'm saying here. Anyway, this is the Dove Lady, over and out for now. Bye-bye.